arrangements. He's famous for taking many cat naps during the day. He would work a full day. On the little video on the kiosk out there, you see one of his time cards. Careful with the, it's all original, so careful when you're leaning against something. I mean, you can lean against this, that's fine, but try not to lean against that. He would put in, an average week for him was 95 hours in 1 week. Now, he would clock in just like his employees. But he sort of cheated. He would take cat naps. And, of course, we know now that cat naps are good for the creative and thinking process. So, you know, he was ahead of his time even in that. He was also ahead of his time in having a research lab. The idea of having a research campus is very common now. I mean, every major company has at least a small, if not a large campus of people just devoted to thinking and coming up with new ideas. He came with that idea of having a place where you collect people that are experts, and you have, say, a library, and you have dedicated space for just experimenting. So he wasn't just an expert in mechanical things and electrical things. He was a real expert in chemistry, and he was also an expert in business practices. His lawyer in the mid-1890s realized that Edison was a brand, and his lawyer took great pains, starting in the middle 1890s, to pursue anybody who used Edison as a generic term for any of their products. So the idea of branding started with Edison. But it was justified in Edison's case because for all the decades that you could buy an Edison brand product, they were known as the best quality product. You'll hear more about that when you hear about the phonographs. The Victor Phonograph Company and Columbia, they were competitors, but their products were technically far, far worse. I'm not saying that as being an Edison tour person, or I'm just a volunteer, but I'm an engineer. I'm a retired engineer, and I have a master's degree in engineering, both electrical and mechanical, and I look at some of the stuff, and it's just so far ahead of what other people were doing. And even when it was reaching production, his products were by far the best quality products you could buy in their field. So,
what about his spiritual, religious beliefs?
Well, he was pretty agnostic. He didn't follow being very religious.
That explains his success.
Well, yes, if there's arguments to be said both ways. You know, politics and religion don't necessarily want to discuss those.
Because he's pretty metaphysical. That bed's mentioned a million places and times about creativity, incubation of ideas, working with the unconscious. That's really a famous bed.
Yeah. He did say very specifically he didn't want to work on war things. He didn't want any of his stuff. He didn't work directly on war things. He was approached in 1914 to help work on a torpedo, which you'll see a photo here. He's on the Naval Development Board as a chairman in 1914. And he served in that for a short while, and then he resigned, and he said, I'll become your figurehead guy because I know my value as a name, but I'm not going to do any active work to even work on, make better torpedoes. But he definitely didn't want to have anything associated. You'll notice that nothing he worked on, if he had applied himself to like explosives, because he was a master chemist, he could have made the best explosives in the world, but he didn't. Nothing had anything related, even remotely, with weapons or destruction of human life did he touch.
Are any of his, Charles's descendants, are they like well known? Are they?
The interesting thing about Edison had 6 children. I think it's 3 and 3. 3 from the first wife and 3 from the second wife. And one son, Charles, became governor during the wartime years. But the only child of his, out of the 6 that had any children, was his daughter, Madeline. Oh. Now, she had 4 sons. And the opening weekend after the renovation, now some of you might be aware that this place was closed for 5 years. The renovation, the big massive renovation was finished last October. The opening weekend was last October. And one of the grandsons was here. And but the other 3 grandsons, I think he's the only one that's still alive, actually. I'm not sure.
Does he retain the name Edison?
No.
Okay.
The daughter, Madeline, I think the man she married was named Stowe. But yeah, there's no No Edison,
Wow.
no Edison named descendants. So, just the luck of the draw, I guess. The luck of something. Any other questions? Hopefully a question I can answer.
I'm sorry to get, but I have one question, which is, Edison invented, the phonograph, so, talking, sound, or was it 1870s or 80s, and then there's the pictures, which, my question is, how come you didn't have a synchronicity between
He was working on that. You'll see on the third floor mini museum. I call it the mini museum. It's an exhibit with some plaques, with some descriptive plaques of some of his major inventions, or some of his minor, actually, some of his less well-known inventions, I should actually say. You'll see that he didn't work in that area.
Okay.
That was an obvious thing. But interesting that you point that out. You mentioned that. It makes me think of something else. That the reason he got to start in the phonograph and the whole area of sound reproduction in general was he was approached by Bell to improve the telephone. That's a little-known fact of history. And Edison came up with the idea of having a carbon microphone, which, did any of you ever take apart old-style phones? You take off the receiver, and there'd be a little, the speaker part would come out. The microphone part would come out. The speaker part was always wired in the old-style phones, the old Western Electric phones. But that was a self-contained microphone. You could connect wires to that as a microphone, and all it is carbon particles that change their conductivity as the pressure changes. It's a very sensitive effect. And Edison invented that, and that was an improvement to the telephone, because the earliest telephone that Bell had invented would only transmit, had very low power. He didn't have a good microphone. So Edison came up with that as an improvement to that, to the Bell telephone. So
to me,
Did he like have a patent on that component of the telephone?
I think, I'm not sure if he has a patent or because he was working as a consultant to Bell, because that was in the very earliest days before Edison had really started making a big organization around him. So,
Well, thank you, Chip.
Thanks very much.
you bet.
Now, Mr. Blaine, as you've been nearly around the world, I'll take you round the world on the photograph. I'll not charge you anything. I'll take you on the steamer, Canard steamer to Liverpool, and from Liverpool to London, from London on the London and Brighton Railroad to Brighton, and from Brighton we'll go on those little 2-cent steamers across the English Channel to Calais, and from Calais we'll go on to Chemin du Fer du Nord. I can't give you the exact Parisian pronunciation of this railroad, but I guess you'll understand it. We'll get into Paris and make for the Grand Hotel. Then in the morning we'll go to our bankers and get a little money on our letters of credit. Then we'll go and stay around Paris for about 2 weeks, go to Berlin. After we've stayed about 2-3 days in Berlin and got the blues, we'll go to St. Petersburg. And St. Petersburg we'll go to Moscow, and from Moscow back by the same route to Berlin. And from Berlin we'll go to Vienna, and from Vienna to Budapest to see the Hungarians. And then most people would go to Monte Carlo. But we'll not go to Monte Carlo, we'll go to Munich, or Munchen. I believe they call it Munchen, but that's not a very nice name to me. I like to call it Munich. Well, then from Munich we'll go to Milan. Milan we'll go to Rome. Rome we'll go across the Mediterranean Sea. I don't know, but when I'm a little out in my geography, we'll go to Alexandria. Alexandria through the Suez Canal to the Red Sea, into the Bay of Bengal, and then to Bombay. Bombay, we'll probably get the colony and stay in the hospital 2-3 months and have lots of fun. And then we'll go to Calcutta, Calcutta to Singapore on the Malay Archipelago, and then to Hong Kong, Hong Kong to Tokyo, Tokyo on the Pacific Mail Steamship Company to San Francisco, San Francisco to Ogden, Ogden to Laramie, Laramie to Cheyenne, Cheyenne to Omaha, Omaha to Chicago, Chicago to Pittsburgh, Harrisburg, Philadelphia, New York. Now, Mr. Blaine, why don't you say a few words on another cylinder so my young man can bring it over to the laboratory. I want to put it through a process and get several hundred duplicate cylinders so other people can hear what you say. Goodbye, Edison.